I can't use nails. You were giving me a hard time. And
That's
I was
awesome.
giving you a hard time.
I was just going to say the same thing right now.
And I'm like, in this instance, screws are better. And you're like, who's this mumbo jumbo guy telling me I can't use nails? Todd, how you doing today?
Doing good, Joe. Doing good. How are you?
Good. Well, what's our situation today?
Today we are talking about a little bit of our own backgrounds. Just we're a few episodes in here, and we have. I don't think all of our many fans really know where we even came from. Talking about what we're talking about.
Yeah, that's
probably somewhat important, right? So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to kick that back to you, actually, and let you start on just your background and how we got here.
All right. A little bit about who we are. That's the episode today. A little bit about who we are. All right. So my name is Joe Tarquino, and I'm just going to kind of go in chronological order, I think. So I've been a laborer, owner, and everything in between for a remodeling company. I also did a stint as a corporate accountant for a while there. I think I'm pretty detail oriented, bordering on maybe some OCD issues.
Self-aware, man. I appreciate that. I can appreciate that. I can also attest to it. So yeah.
Yeah. Fair. Probably been told that I'm maybe too blunt and honest at times. And if you know anything about the disc profile, I am a high DC, where that comes in at.
What is it? What is that? I do not.
Disc profile?
Yeah, I have no idea what that is.
Okay. Have you ever done like the Myers-Briggs tests?
No, I'm familiar with it, but
no. Okay, but you know what it is?
Yes.
Okay, so the disc profile, same thing. You take a test and it tells you a little bit about your personality, and it's broken up into 4 categories: D, I, S, and C.
Okay.
And we can go into that's a whole nother episode. We can talk about disc profiles, but
yeah.
D's are dominant. They are loud, obnoxious, extroverted. They tend to like to take control of the conversation. They talk over you. They speak in very factual. Their opinion is usually stated as fact. And it's just their personality. Again, none of these are bad. I's are, what's I? I is
introvert.
Oh, they're like influencers, kind of. They want people to like themselves, or they want people to like them. So they spend a lot of time. They're extroverted. They like to be in a crowd. Yeah.
Okay.
What does S stand for? I can't remember what S stands for, but they are very quiet. They're the type of people that they're very unconfrontational. They do not want conflict. They will listen to you, and they will be the people that are shaking their head yes, but in their head they're going, I don't believe in a word you're saying. But on the outside they're shaking their head yes. So that's those people. They're usually
got a little bit of S in me, but yeah.
They're usually a little introverted, quiet.
Mm-hmm.
And C's are very numbers oriented. That's like your engineers and those type of people that very factual, fact, number. They're the ones that like the spreadsheets.
Yeah. So psycho.
Yeah. So I'm a high D and C. So that's where that comes in. Anyway,
gotcha.
Moving on.
Sorry. Go on.
So early on in my life, so I got interested in the trades in the beginning, working for my dad, basically. My dad was a plumber. And so I went to work for him on the side. And when I was young, sweating pipe copper. So I learned a lot of that. And I did, I also worked with a lot of his friends who also owned like side businesses, trade partners, that kind of thing. So I went and kind of worked with them. I worked for a roofer for a while, a laborer, a mason. And while I was working, and this is very young, like early high school years, but I really felt like the importance of college. Like I did not want to do this. This was
Mhm.
too much work. This was a lot of work.
Yeah,
College
you
is
were doing
important.
roofing, plumbing, and masonry. You picked three of the hardest trades. Those are all super labor intensive and hard work.
Totally. Yeah. And I didn't mind it at the time. It's just I saw that my dad was being laid off a lot during the winters. And I kind of felt like I needed to go to college so I wouldn't be laid off in winter. I didn't want to not make any money. And that was a big that was a thing. I saw every year he would go on unemployment during the winter, and he'd get hired back on, and then and it just happened every year, and
And
it
he was
just
union,
was
correct? He was a
he
union
was
plumber.
union. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And it was something that I just didn't want to deal with. So I thought college was the answer. And of course, that's what we grew up believing, that college was the answer. So I went to college. I went to DePaul University, downtown Chicago, got my bachelor's degree in finance. I was working because while I was going to school, I got a job as a corporate accountant and just continued down that avenue and became a corporate accountant while I was going to school, and then got my degree and then continued as a corporate accountant for in total about 10 years. I was in corporate accounting. During that time, though, there was a small time when I got laid off. And when I did get laid off from accounting, and there was the economy dipped, we had Enron and Arthur Anderson kind of went belly up at that time. I'm really aging myself here. And then so I got laid off then as an accountant, and immediately I fell back into being a laborer. So I ended up getting a job as a laborer on a remodeling company. And this was the first time where I wasn't working for a specialty trade. I was working for an overall remodeler, general contractor, who was doing all of the things: tiling, flooring, drywalling, everything, electric. And I only worked for a summer with him, but at that time I learned, oh my God, I learned so much. And most of my knowledge came from those that summer working. Now, economy got a little bit better, and I got accounting job again and continued on with that 10 years. But it was an aha moment for me that the very thing that I was trying to stay away from, which was laboring and the trades, and for and I was staying away from that so I wouldn't be laid off during the
Hmm.
winters. And here I was a corporate accountant and then got laid off. So it was a realization that the corporate world and or going to college doesn't there's no safety net. That doesn't mean that you can't get laid off for
Sure.
whatever reason,
Yeah.
whether it's weather or the economy slowing down or something like
Hey,
catastrophic happened in the
you may have put
economy.
your time in and been too high paid, and they're just going to get rid of you because they're paying you too much. Yeah, that happens all the
Yeah,
time.
very much so.
Yeah.
But up until that point, now I was very young, but up until that point, I didn't really see the world that way. So it was an aha moment for me. So I went back into accounting, and like I said, about 10 years into accounting, I really was getting bored. I realized what my boss was doing. I learned what my boss's boss was doing. And again, boring. I knew I could do it. I just didn't know if I wanted to. And I didn't know if I wanted to do that for like the rest of my life. And I ended up just quitting and starting a remodeling company, believe it or not. And as silly as that all seemed at the time, I did. So I started Nail It Innovations, did that for 15 years. And, when you start a remodeling company, I was taking anything and I didn't know what I was worth. I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't have any connections. I didn't know anything other than the knowledge I acquired through working, as a laborer on random jobs throughout, and just winging it. I had also, in that time while I was a corporate accountant, now this is the 90s now. So remember, everybody and their mom was flipping houses at the time. I
Yeah.
was at the point where I was buying my own house, and then I would live in it and remodel it, make all the mistakes on my house, and then go to work as an accountant, and then come home, and at night and weekends I would remodel my bathroom
Mm-hmm.
because it was fun. I was doing it just because it was fun. I wanted to tear things apart. It was just fun to
Yeah,
me.
for sure. Yeah.
No one was gonna pay me to. So, and I made a lot of mistakes and I learned a ton, but it was on my own house, my own problems, my own issues, my own money. But I did 3 houses that way. I would live in the house for a year, remodel it while I was there, and then I would sell it and move on to the next one. I never really felt like I was flipping. It was it was
Just
it was
sweat equity in your
something I
sweat
did.
equity and
Yeah.
your improving the house
Yeah.
while you live there. That's all. Yeah.
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 It was fun. It was fun. So as Nail It progressed, I started taking anything, and then I started learning more and started to make connections and everything. I started and eventually got into general contracting. Yeah, kind of design build kind of projects is where I was heading with Nail It. And then my wife decided that she got a job offer in Washington and she wanted to move to Washington, and I was all for it. I was happy for her. But darn it, I got to move to Washington now. I'm living in Chicago area. So I shut down Nail It and I move out to Washington. So there I worked for 2 companies as an employee for these 2 companies. They were design build companies. They were very, very small and they wanted to become bigger design build companies. And I did.
What's very, very small?
So the first one I worked for was a owner operator. He had one project manager and he wanted to go to the next level. And by how do I stop being on the job site every day? How do I stop giving free estimates? How do I processes, procedures, everything, all that? He just didn't have any of that. So I primarily came on as a business consulting, estimating, salesperson. And
Okay.
that's kind of the role that I took for both of these companies. So the first one, they got up and running in 2 years, doing great. I moved on to another company who was a little bit further along on their progression, but they were stagnant in it. Just kind of felt like they hit a roadmap and a road bump and just couldn't get over it and didn't know how to scale. So I came on board there, and again, primarily business consulting, estimating, sales. But there, they needed a lot of help with the production side of things. What is it going to look like if we bring in design in house? So I helped with that. And then what does it look like on the production side of things? They were falling apart making a lot of mistakes. They had one project manager running way too many projects at once, and things were just kind of falling down. They had no policies, no procedures, no checklists, no nothing. So I came on and helped smooth that all out. That's kind of where that's where I was. Throughout that whole career, though, I became a certified remodeling project manager, CRPM, through the NARI, National Association of the Remodelers Industry. I've sat on NARI's board. I was a board member, the Chicago chapter. I was also their treasurer. I've won multiple awards, remodeling excellence awards. I'm certified in the Schluter system, so you'll probably hear you'll hear me talking a lot about the Schluter system because I'm in love with it.
We can talk about Schluter. I'm well versed. Yeah, we can talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah, they are not well adversed out here in the Pacific Northwest with the Schluter. No, it's Hydroblock out here.
Okay.
And then I also became a certified QuickBooks Pro advisor for online and payroll. And then personally, I like hiking, do a lot of hiking. I'm a photographer. I'm an artist. I dabble in the charcoal and graphite for artists, for drawing. I'm a certified rescue diver. I do like my scuba diving, and I'm a certified U.S. sailor, so I like sailing too. We do a lot of sailing here now that I got the Puget Sound here to sail in, so that's pretty awesome.
Yes, it is.
So
beautiful part of the country.
Yes, it is gorgeous. But what I learned working for those last two companies as an employee, I decided that employment wasn't the best avenue for me being able to help. So I started, I decided, you know what, I'm going to go back into small business ownership. And I started Plum Financial. That is a business consulting, CFO services, bookkeeping, that kind of thing. And that's where I think there was a lot of limitations put on me as an employee. And I think really to help grow somebody's business, I can't be in it. So I thought,
okay,
you know what? I can really help build small businesses in this industry from the outside. So I started Plum Financial for that kind of, for that purpose, kind of consulting, helping people grow their business, and or just simply understanding their bookkeeping and taking care of that for them, or all of the above. In tandem to that, I started Plum Perfect Builders. That is a general contracting services remodeling company. That's where I'm still love taking stuff apart, but I want to get paid for it this time
and put it back together, right? Not just taking things apart.
Sure. Yeah, actually, I don't like the demo process. I'm much, yeah, and you know that I don't like demo. So I do like putting things back together. Yeah, very much.
I like demo. I still think I'm going to find a gold bar. I still think I'm going to find a gold bar somewhere. I don't have something.
Yeah,
I'm going to find some treasure in some socket
searching
somewhere from 1946. Yeah, because someone was scared of the banks failing. You know, something's going to happen.
Yeah,
I'm
and every other remodeler out there.
I'm due.
Yeah.
Perfect Builders. So, I like that. I like the name.
Thanks. Yeah.
I like the name.
So that's kind of that's me in a nutshell there.
Okay.
So I don't know, clear as mud.
I like it.
Definitely had a curvy path into this industry, for sure.
Is there another way? Unless you were born into it, I'm not sure there's another route to get to, where the typical remodeling contractor comes from.
I don't know. I mean, your dad did it, and so you do it, and that kind of thing. Maybe be a more straight line than me going off and playing corporate accountant for a while.
Right. Yeah. I think that's actually someone asked me that last week. If I came from this, if I had, did your dad do this? And I said, nope. Yeah. So, but I think that is the only straight line route, is you were just born into it. Your dad was a builder. Could be your mom. Your mom could have been a builder. Your uncle could have been a builder,
Yeah, of
whatever.
course.
But you're just
Of course.
around that process and just, grew up around it and just loved it from the time you were a kid playing with Tonka trucks. And it was just a gradual, incline all the way up, But barring that, everyone's got that somewhat of that jagged line, I think, to get to the point you get to, Those are the interesting parts, right? Those little decisions you make to end up where you end up.
So that might be the reason why you listen or don't listen to us.
Right.
It's a little bit about me. What about you, Todd?
Let's see. First off, good summary. That was good. One thing I will say, and just on that topic of like arriving at where we arrived at, like you and I have discussed this before, not on a podcast, but just the idea of how many different roles you have to play if you're a contractor, like what you are to a client. You're a marriage counselor, you're going over their budgets, so you're a financial advisor, you're a designer, you're a mediator of everything. You're just the amount of different hats you have to play, you have to wear in order for this to play out well. So, you having a degree in finance certainly has helped you over the years. That's probably my biggest struggle, is just me. I'm not a paper pusher. I don't like the books. I don't mind writing invoices, but beyond that, I'm not big on. I actually don't mind doing estimates either, because I like thinking a project through and just going over all that stuff. I don't mind that at all. It's the payroll and the books, that the nitty gritty accounting stuff that I just don't. Just not my bag. Just not my bag. But anyway, having said that, Chicago born and raised. Let's see, I'm 45 years old. I been in this business for 24 years professionally. 13 of those years are my own business. Went to Catholic school all the way, grade school through high school. So there was no such thing as there was no trade program. There was no auto shop. There was no hands-on anything. Did not exist. It was religion class followed by math class followed by another religion class, as opposed to, so I have such good morals, as opposed to having a shop class, having some sort of hands-on, right? But I had
how many rulers did they have to go through in that school because of you?
Funny thing is, I never learned how to read a fucking ruler. It was just used for reprimanding me. Yeah. So I had, I always say my father was a jack of all trades, master of none, right? Like he was.
Sure.
I shouldn't say was. He's still around, and he still helps me actually to this day. He's 79 years old, and he still helps me sometimes. He just enjoys it,
Good for him.
Absolutely. Absolutely. He's 79, and he's up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and he's ready to go. He just wants something to do for the day. So those little, whether it's just go for stuff, to go pick this up, pick that up, go meet an inspector somewhere, go do this little handyman project. He loves it, and I had a couple of younger guys working, so he gets to teach them some stuff, and, it just works really well. So I'm very thankful for that. But he did not do this professionally. He owned a hair salon for 26 years, far northwest side of Chicago. He eventually was just done with that. He had done it for 26 years, his own business, and then I think another 5 or 6 maybe that he had worked for someone else before he started his own salon. So he eventually got to the point where he was just done. He just didn't want to do it anymore and was sick of it. And so he started doing handyman and painting projects, And he did pretty well. He was in with a couple realtors, just getting houses ready for the market. And that's kind of how I started in this. Because after high school, I did not go to college. I went to community college, if you want to consider that college. I went to a pretty good high school, which was a college prep high school. So the fact that I did not go to college was much to their chagrin, because it brought their numbers down of who all went and graduated a 4-year university. So I think that was the one time I met my guidance counselor, was when she found out that I was not going to university. And she was upset about it because it's going to ruin their numbers. So then she said, why are you not going? I can get you into any state school. Your grades are fine. And I said, I have no reason to go. I just didn't know what I wanted to do. Didn't have any reason to go. What I did want to do at the time, I wanted to get on the fire department. In order to get on the fire department, you had to have 2 years of college. And really that was about it. But I grew up being on the far northwest side of the city. There was a lot of Chicago police, a lot of Chicago firemen, a lot of city workers that lived in that area. And I had a few of them that were neighbors. So I always picked their brains, and they just said the best thing to do is get your EMT certification while you're getting your 2 years of college, and you'll get on. Don't worry about it. It'll be fine. So that's what I did. I got my EMT certification. I got my 2 years of college, associate's degree in just associate in arts degree. And while I was doing that second year of being at Oakton, I took an apprenticeship for a builder on the North Shore. And that's back in those days. There wasn't, there was an ad in the neighborhood newspaper, and it just said, someone who wants to learn the construction industry. And I was like, yeah, I'd like to learn the construction industry. Sure, why not? So I answered the ad. I went and met him, and it was just a foot in the door laborer position. So he's like, you want the job? It's yours. So I said, yeah, I'll take it. So I started out at $12 an hour, driving a, Chevy 3500 stick shift that had a lift gate on it. So I was a guy driving around picking up materials and picking up garbage from sites and taking it to the dump and all that stuff. And when I got all that stuff done, it was up to me. He always told me, you will get back as much as you put into this. And he was absolutely right. Absolutely right. So if you did your job, you busted your ass, you got job sites cleaned up, you got materials there, then you're holding the other end of the tape measure, right? And then you get to ask all the questions. Well, what's this? What's that? What's this? Why are we doing this? And then I probably was annoying sometimes asking questions. But thankfully, I had some guys that were doing this for a long time. And a couple of them were actually very good teachers. So I was all on the job training for what I do now. And I obviously did not get on the fire department. Otherwise, I probably would not be sitting here. But I had, between my father getting me into that a little bit, and I had an older brother that did heating and air conditioning and electric work. And he always always wrenched on cars too, from the time he was 15 years old. So he was always just mechanically inclined, troubleshooting type. So between those two, I was always around it. I was 4 years younger, 5 years younger than my brother. So I was always around it in some way, shape, or form. There was always something in the garage of my house where needed troubleshooting. Some car needed to get started. Something wasn't working in the house, whatever it was. So I think I just always was around it a little bit, but in that professional capacity, it was that first apprenticeship while I was waiting on the fire department. And while I was there, climbed a ladder. I went from being that gopher laborer guy to they hired someone else to replace that position. So I was just full on apprentice. I was there every day. I had my bags on. I was ready to go. I was still a younger guy, but teach me whatever, I'll do it, So he did a lot of additions, a lot of whole house remodels, all higher end work, and eventually got into custom home builds. And as his business was kind of growing in that capacity, so was my part in his business. So I went from laborer to apprentice to carpenter to lead carpenter / project manager. In the last 2.5 years I was there, that's all I was as a project manager. I was not picking up tools. I was going from project to project, meeting with designers, architects, homeowners, subcontractors, walking through projects, scheduling everybody, going through budgets. And I could not be more thankful for having that experience, just being able to do that for someone else's company for almost 3 years. He was an attorney, my former employer. And so he, of course, was crossing the T's, dotting the I's with his contracts. So I got to sit in the office and see what that looked like to make sure was covering my own ass, when I got to do this on my own. So I saw what that all looked like. And unfortunately, I loved working there, actually. I was getting paid well. I was on salary. I had 3 weeks paid vacation, paid holidays, company vehicle, company phone. And I had a little bit of just autonomy. He wasn't keeping tabs on me all day. So if I went out and I was having breakfast somewhere, like, hey, if I'm going through doing my scheduling while I'm having breakfast and I'm making some phone calls or doing whatever I'm doing, as long as it was productive and the end results were good, it was great. It worked out really well. Enter 2008. He had 2 custom home builds that we had just built that year. And North Shore, you're familiar with the North Shore of Chicago. One of them was about a block and a half from the lake in Glencoe. And that had a price tag of about $3.2 million when it was built. And mind you, 2008 numbers, yeah, I think it was about 3.2. And I think he ended up selling it for 2.4.
Ouch.
It just, yeah. So he actually had 6 employees, including myself. And little by little, let this guy go, let this guy go, let this guy go, until the point where it was just me and him sitting in the office. And I was like, I'm just looking at him, waiting for that day, just like, I know you have to let me go. You're not going to keep paying me to just sit here. I have nothing to do. I have nothing to do. So eventually he did. And I still remember his wife, the day they let me go, his wife, she was such a sweetheart. She since passed away, but she was such a sweetheart. She came down with she knew I loved ice cream. Came down with a big bowl of vanilla ice cream and drizzled some Kahlua on top of it. And she was just crying. She's like, we have to let you go. We don't want to, but we have to. And I'm like, I get it. I'm surprised you kept me here this long, you know? So she said, what are you going to do? I'm like, well, first I'm going to go skiing. And then after, she's like, you're going to go skiing? I'm like, yeah. I saved up some money. I don't have kids. I don't have, so I went skiing. And then when I came back, I got a job because there was nothing out there. I mean, there was nothing out there. You were not going to find a job working for a remodeling company, working for a GC. So I got a job with a handyman company that was still North Shore. So I was familiar with the area and everything else. And this was kind of my neck of the woods as far as work was concerned. And I went to work for him, and it could not have been more different. He had no experience in actual building. He started introducing me as his in-house electrician. You know me. I'm not an electrician, nor do I claim to be. I know the basics of electricity because I'm a contractor. I know the basics. I know the safety behind it, and I know a good amount of codes. I would never claim to be an electrician. First off, you're insulting an electrician if you're saying. Secondly, it's just the legalities of that. Why on earth would you ever say that this is our in-house electrician unless I was actually an electrician? So he had put me on a project that was replacing GFCI, they were just outlets in a kitchen backsplash. And he said, oh, these have to be GFCIs. So Todd's going to replace all these. Well, at that time, I didn't know, because I'm not an electrician, that there's an outlet that could be operating downstream off of another GFCI. Right? So you may not see that every one of these is actually a GFCI, but that outlet is connected to that GFCI, right? So I went to replace these and turned out it did not need to be done. They're all operating off of GFCI anyways. My point in saying that is this was someone who did not know what he was doing, just liked the idea of getting into this business. He had nothing but a sales background and thought he could just go sell all this stuff to all these North Shore people. And he did, and he still does. However, me knowing what I know, being in that situation, I despised him after about 6 weeks. The way he ran his business, the way he conducted himself, which was just false. And another thing was every day of work, every day after you worked, even if you're working on the same project for a week, he wanted you to collect a check at the end of every day. Every day. So I said, I'm going to be here all week. You want me to ask them for a check every day? And he said, yeah. And he would show up. I either had to go back to his house and drop a check off, or he would show up at the job and say, did you get a check? And like, he was operating on that thin, we need a check every day from every client. He was like, I don't know what kind of shit show you're running here, but if you can do this, I most certainly can do this. So fortunately, I had one of our previous clients was an accountant who I just really liked. And to this day, she's my accountant. So I had met with her and her husband. They were both accountants, and just kind of sat with them and thought, like, can I make a go of this? Would you guys help me with just kind of the ins and outs of how to start my business and tax structure and what I need to do? And thankfully they did. I think I had to like clean out some gutters at that time or something and like replace a storm door or whatever in order to get that business info. But hey, that was an even trade for me when I was, 30 years old, right? So I had started this, like I said, probably about 13 or 14 years ago. And at that time, very similar to you, I was taking anything I could get. If I was replacing a storm door, I didn't care what it was. You need me to paint your ceiling because you had water damage? Fine. I'm happy to do that, And it's so funny to look back on that and see what you were willing to do and what you're willing to take. You were so happy to get those just little projects just to start out. And now not that I'm a big company by any means, but I've had a very slow growth, but a very slow and steady growth. And right now being, 2 full-time employees, like I said, my dad still helps. And I have a list of subs, tile setters, carpenters, electricians, drywallers, whatever. And it's much more of just running projects, much more of the day-to-day stuff. So what did I miss?
What's the name of your company?
Top Drawer Carpentry. Currently located in Barrington. And that's kind of why I went with carpentry, because at the time, it was when we started, there was no work. And I was like, if I need work, like I can do carpentry work. I didn't want to try and sell myself as a general contractor. I just was not comfortable with it at the time. And I've thought about renaming or whatever, but at this point, it's like where I'm at, and it doesn't seem to matter much. I get clients I've had for years who will write me a check that says Top Drawer Construction on it. It's like, not my company name, but all right, they seem to cash them anyways, so it's fine. Yeah. So, so anyway, I guess that's a quick summary of how I got here.
Okay. Yeah. That sounds wonderful. I think you had quite the straight line. We started this saying it's kind of hard to have a straight line unless you were born into it, but you're pretty close.
I am pretty close. I haven't done anything else professionally.
Sounds like, you've been in this business a lot longer than I have.
I tried modeling, but no one would hire me.
Yeah. Unfortunately, your dad was a hairstylist, and it did you no good in keeping your hair.
All the free haircuts I could possibly want.
That's right. Oh, that's funny.
That worked out great. Yeah.
Well, that was a little bit about us and a little bit about Todd and Top Drawer Carpentry, Joe with Plum Financial and Plum Perfect Builders.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anything else you want to leave with?
Yeah. Well, I guess how we met.
Yeah. Shoot. Why don't we talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. Online dating.
Is there a meet your next contractor dating app? Yeah.
Thanks for swiping right, Joe. Thanks.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, that's a good all right. So how did we meet? You want to take it? Go for it, or?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. We had a
Let's see if we remember the same.
Hey. We had I guess I'll say mutual acquaintance. You know who he is. He was more so a colleague to me than you, I think, but you knew who he was. And he was heavily involved in NARI, National Association of the Modeling Industry. And you had brought that up earlier. I was also a member of NARI for 4 years, 5 years. I was on the board for 2 of those years. I've since been off, but no, that's a different conversation. When I first went to one of those meetings, this person who we both know, I was asking him on a project. I said, I'm looking for a new tile setter. I said, do you know any tile setters? And he said, well, you can probably come to this NARI meeting. He said, there's tile setters there. And I said, okay, so what is this? What are we doing? What is a NARI meeting? And he said, well, it's a round table thing when you first get there. It literally at that time was a round table. It was a huge thing.
Yeah.
You walked in, got yourself something to drink, sat down. You could network for a few minutes, but you would sit down at this round table and there was just a topic up for discussion. So I sat there at that, and I remember thinking to myself, like, I still remember what that topic was. It was the guy at the time who was the president brought the topic and said, is anyone getting all these text messages from customers that are just after hours, and it's just annoying, and how do you deal with that?
Yeah.
And I remember thinking to myself, I was sitting there having a beer in my hand, and I'm looking around the table thinking, are we really going to talk about this? Is this actually what these guys do? I remember thinking that just like, that was just the weirdest thing to me.
Yeah.
But anyways, I digress. So after that roundtable meeting, my friend had said, "Oh, that guy does tile work," and he pointed at you. He pointed at Joe. So I walked over to you and I said, "You do tile work?" And you said, "I know how to do tile work." And I said, "Okay, but you're not a tile guy?" And you're like, "No, I'm a remodeling contractor, but I can do tile work." And I was like, "Okay." And then we just started talking, and we kept talking and kept talking. And then it was like we exchanged numbers, and I remember we went out for breakfast one day, and we were just from the time we met, we were just kind of on the same wavelength.
Yeah, very much so. So I'll take it from there because I remember the next step. So the next step was I'm sitting in my house, and I have what was a bigger project to me at the time, which is not a very big project now, but it was a fairly good sized project for me at the time. And it was in a very nice house, much nicer. It was a nicer project than my previous ones. And I was a little bit in a jam because I was putting in these two doors, one of them being a big French door, and I needed a hand. I needed help. And I'm sitting at my desk, and it was just like a week after meeting you at the NARI meeting. And I remember thinking, I need help. And I thought to myself, I'm having these kind of random, but isn't so random now that I know a little bit more than I did then, these issues with my company, and how do I do this and how do I do that all on my own? So I reached out to you, just random. I had your phone number, and I was like, I remember leaving a message. I don't know if you remember me. I'm having these issues hiring people, not hiring people. I'm just wondering if you're having the same problems. Give me a shout back. And you called me back. And then I pitched you a job. Hey, would you be willing to come and help me do some carpentry work? And you said, sure, I said, okay, well, just meet me at the job site and we can walk through it. You can give me a quote and all that. And you met me at the job, and we walked through it. And
I still remember project in Hinsdale.
Yeah. You gave me a quote, and we decided to work together. So I hired you to work on that project with me, and I busted your balls through the whole thing.
It was
Gave you a hard time. I believe, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but I believe you weren't sure if you wanted to work with me after that.
Yeah, that was so. I remember that job absolutely. I remember that job.
Do you
100%.
Remember what I was giving you a hard time about?
I remember mudding and taping.
It was nails.
There was like
You remember the nails thing? You were nailing in. We were building a little knee wall on top of a closet. We were filling the top of the closet in, and you're putting nails in. And I told you to stop using nails. We use screws. You were like, the damn name of your company is Nail It. Why I can't use nail? You were giving me a hard time.
That's awesome. I was just gonna say the same thing right now.
And I'm like, in this instance, screws are better. And you're like, who's this mumbo jumbo guy telling me I can't use nails?
Right. I've been doing this for 10 years. You're telling me I'm building a wall and I can't use nails? Who is this guy?
Yeah. And I was like, no, I want you to use screws. Yeah. I think it was all that's funny. So,
yeah.
And it just kind of solidified, because as we were working together, I don't know if you felt this way, but I felt like we worked very similar. I'm much more OCD about things, but that's my own problems that I have to work out with myself. But I thought we worked well together, and I enjoyed the ability that you had to work on your own. I didn't have to stand above you. And matter of fact, there was an issue with one of the trim on that job that you were able to go and hunt down your own trim. You got it and you brought it back and fixed it and all that. And I didn't have to deal with any of that. And I thought that was
Mm-hmm.
great.
Sure.
So I was happy to work with you moving forward. I think you told me at some point that you weren't sure if you wanted to work with me after that or not. I don't remember. You could elaborate. But yeah. And as we just started to continue to talk over time, we both kind of realized that there's so many similarities in our life. It's ridiculous. So it's kind of funny.
Yeah, for
it's
sure.
really kind of funny.
There was.
Yeah.
We lived in the
Just
same,
kind of feels
same
like
style house. We both had raised ranch houses. We both opened our businesses at the same time. We were the same age.
right around the
We had
same
no
time.
kids.
Yep, we're the
We
same
both
age.
married smarter
Yeah.
than ourselves. You know, there was just that list kind of went on.
Yeah, we
and went
both
on.
married up for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, but we had.
Yeah.
There was, for sure, to your point. I mean, it was always questionable for me working with anybody because I'm just stubborn. You know, I don't know, on that disc thing, I'm not sure where I would fall, but I'm probably partially the S person because I don't like conflict, but I'm also very set in how I want to do things when it comes to business stuff. And also just pace of work, right? Like there's some guys who just can't talk and work at the same time. And it's like, why do you need to put all your tools down if you're going to say something? Just talk while you're working, you know? So you could always do that. Like we always if we work together, and actually I said this a couple of weeks ago, is like we had a good checks and balances. You know? So there was always, we would question each other always in a constructive way. So it was always like, okay, why are you doing this way? Have you thought about this? Why are we doing that? So I always appreciated that because it was like, you had to justify your own process. You know, this is your project. Why are we doing this way? If there's a better system or a better method or whatever it is, or, you know, or even if the other person was just curious, but there was always that checks and balances. So we always just kind of worked really well together. That's difficult to find in this business.
For sure. I agree 100%. I think it is very difficult to find somebody to work with that you work so well together with in this industry. Very much so.
Yeah.
So it worked really well for us. And then
right. And we worked together for probably what?
Geez, I don't know. 5 years? More than that?
Probably.
I don't know.
Yeah, I was gonna say 4 or 5 years.
Yeah. Yeah, but we met at a NARI meeting and hit it off. Speed dating, like.
Really? Yeah, pretty much. That's pretty much what it was. Yeah, speed dating. Shit.
Yeah. So, all right. Well,
and now
that's a little bit about us, about your renovation situation hosts.
Mm-hmm.
If you got any questions, thoughts, concerns, feel free to comment below, and we'll take a stab at it. Anything else? Anything else I'm forgetting?
I don't think so. I think we're pretty well covered.
All right. Till next time.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Cheers, man. Good to see you.